All right, today we're going to go over a buyer presentation. One of my friends who's also a real estate agent, he's a luxury agent in Boca Raton, Florida. Peter Michael, he's going to be the buyer today. And what we're going to do is we're going to first go over what he's looking for. If he were a buyer, the whole idea is for you guys to get comfortable with the buyer presentation. It's pretty much like a listing presentation. My idea, I've been using this checklist for about 20 years. I've updated it a little bit. This is for Ohio, by the way. Peter's in Florida. So some of the things on this are going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. You're going to have to acclimate. But the whole idea is the flow and you're building value. So you're going to go over what the buyer wants to talk about first is what they're looking for, price range, wish list. That's what they're excited about. Then we're going to talk about it. The first checklist is going to be once you found a house, what do you do next? And then the next checklist is going to be once you're under contract, what do you do next? The whole idea of this is to explain the process, show that it's quite complicated, that we don't just open doors. And then at the end of this, we say, okay, based on this, is this the type of service you want? And then we go into the buyer representation agreement. So that's the whole idea of this. Usually it takes about 40 minutes. And to give you some background, I've been a licensed real estate agent since 1988 when I was 19. I started using a buyer representation agreement in 1995. During 1995 and 1996, I also collected a $500 retainer fee from buyers that I would credit back to them towards their earnest money once they were under contract. I only had to keep the money one time when a buyer flaked out. But you will find once a buyer signs a representation agreement, they turn it into a buyer in their own head. It's like a light switch changes or flips because in their own head, they've transitioned into a formal buyer because unless a buyer's serious, they're not going to sign a representation agreement with you. So once they do, you can be sure that these guys are ready, willing, and able, right? So that's the whole idea behind this. So there's lots of benefits. So there's no reason to be scared. So let's get straight into this, Peter. So Peter, thanks for jumping on this Zoom for me with me today. So what are you and your wife? Let's start straight into what you guys are looking for. And first of all, in a perfect world, if you got to be moved into your new house, when would you guys like to be moved in?
Oh man, literally as soon as possible. And you said, what are we looking for? Just a regular 3-bed, 2-bath, nothing crazy, nothing special. We're in about 1,300 square feet. We're looking somewhere closer to probably 2,500, just because we have 2 little ones.
Yep. And you're able to move before you sell your house?
Yeah, we're renting right now.
Oh, you're renting. Okay. That's even better. Have you talked to a lender yet?
No, not yet.
What I'll do when we're done with this, I'll text you a couple of lenders that we use. It's really important right now, especially with rates where they are, that you use a local lender who knows what they're doing, who's respected by other agents, because if we're making an offer on a house and there's multiple offers, the lender that you're using makes a big difference. Because if other realtors know who that lender is, there's going to be some confidence there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does.
Last thing you want to do is go to your bank. Go to your bank, but then at least talk to the couple of people that I'm going to send to you. So what price range are you looking in?
I think we'd be comfortable, like maybe like up to 800.
800? Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not too bad. All right, cool. I mean, there's not a lot of homes on the market right now. Homes are selling very quickly. A lot of them are going under contract within 24 to 48 hours. So unfortunately, there's no pressure coming from me, but there's a lot of pressure from the market. So hopefully you got a stomach of steel. It's going to suck, but once we get through it, you'll be in your own place and we'll get you through it in one piece. Sound good?
Yeah, it
All
does.
right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you, and what we're going to assume is that you just got back, you guys have seen a house that you really want, and what happens next. So I'm going to go through that checklist, what happens through the offer process, and I'm also going to go through a second checklist that goes from day one, from the time we get our offer accepted, what happens through closing. And then after that, we're going to talk about how I get paid and all of that, so I'll answer all those questions. Cool?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. All right. Do you see this?
Yes.
All right. So you found a house. What do you do now? That's the title of this checklist. So assuming that you guys just found a house, you just got back looking at homes, you're excited and all of that. what we're going to do is prior to writing an offer, we're going to see what they paid for it. Not that that matters. I mean, a lot of homes have like almost gone up in like in our market 20 to 30% in the last 3 or 4 years. So it really is irrelevant what they paid for it. But I want you to have a good understanding of what they paid for it, what other homes are selling for in the neighborhood, so that you guys can make smart decisions.
Okay.
Now, in Ohio, we've got 5 documents mainly. We've got a residential property disclosure that the seller has to provide you. If the house was built before 1978, most of the homes that you're going to be looking at were built after that. But in case they were built before 1978, there's a federal form. It's called the lead-based paint disclosure, and that's required on rentals and on houses and condos. The third form is the agency disclosure. That's been around since 1989, and basically that's going to just put the seller on notice that I'm representing you. We have a walkthrough addendum, which is going to be an addendum to the purchase agreement. That gives us the right to walk through the house prior to closing. It's usually within 3 days, just to make sure there's been no craziness. We need to check. Excuse me. We'll get to check on the repairs, any repairs that they made, and then we just make sure the house is intact. It's usually a formality, but I like to make sure we can walk through the house right before closing just to make sure there's been no changes. Last thing we want is for the deal to close and then something's wrong with the house that you weren't aware of. Finally, we've got an affiliated business arrangement disclosure. That just notifies you if our company or I have a partnership with a title company, a lender, insurance company, or anything like that. We have a partnership with a title company, a local one, but it talks about all that on the ABA. All right. Once the offer's been prepared, so here's what happens. You haven't owned a home before, correct?
No.
All right, cool. So basically everything's in writing. So we're going to go through the purchase agreement. It's going to say the price, how much you're putting down, your down payment, earnest money, which is like good faith money. Like when you buy a car and you give them $500 to hold it, that's what earnest money is. In your price range, it's probably going to be $5,000, something like that.
Okay.
And that'll go towards your down payment. Basically, it just shows the seller that you're putting up some money. And by the way, the seller won't get that. It's going to go into a non-interest bearing escrow account.
Okay.
All right. And that's how it works in Ohio. All right. So the purchase agreement is going to have the price, the earnest money, the down payment, the closing date, who's paying for what. And then there's a couple of contingencies in there that are important. We're going to have an opportunity to have a home inspection done. Usually that's done within 7 to 14 days. We'll put it on the contract, and it's going to depend also on what kind of activity the seller's getting on the house, and they might want to get it done quicker than later. So basically that home inspection contingency, if we find anything health and safety related, it's not to find like dripping faucets and blown out light bulbs. It's for health and safety issues, things that would be expensive, something wrong with the heating and cooling system, safety issues inside the electrical panel, or safety issues in electrical issues in general, mold in the attic, structural problems, that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
So once we get through the inspection, we'll be able to, on the next checklist, we're going to go through that, but you will have some rights. The second contingency that's on the purchase agreement is financing. You are going to have to get pre-approved for a loan before you make an offer. No owner is going to take their house off the market for you unless you've actually shown that you've documented your income and your credit, your down payment, your debt to income ratios are in line. They're going to want to see that all that's been verified and documented.
Okay.
All right. So once we go through the offer together, and some of this is going to be basic to you. I mean, you haven't been living under a rock. You haven't owned a house, but some of this will make sense. Some of it will be basic. Some of it you may not have heard of. But once we make an offer on a house, or you do, I'm going to send, we use a platform called Dot Loop. It's an electronic signature program, and it holds all the documents. So I'll be able to send everything to you electronically. We won't have to meet face to face. That'll save you time. I know you've got young kids. So we write the offer up. You and I will discuss it ahead of time. I'll send it over to you and your wife to sign electronically. Then at that point, I send it over to the listing agent. I'll call him or her, make sure they received it. I always call. then they have three options. They can either accept it, meaning they accept all the terms that we've written on the contract. They can reject it. The only time we usually see a rejection is if our offer is terrible or if they've got another offer that was better.
Okay.
So if they get 5 offers, they're going to have to reject 4 of them because they can only accept one.
Of course.
And then finally, a counter offer. The good news is a lot of agents know me in our market, so I'm able to have conversations with them that maybe other agents won't. And I can sort of find out where we need to be a lot of times, which is going to be a benefit to you. But if they make a counter offer, meaning the closing date, they may want to stay in the house after the closing for a period of time and rent it back from you. I mean, there's any number of things that they could counter back on the amount of earnest money, the inspection period. But the good news is if they do that, you're going to have the final say and you're going to know what all of those changes are because I'll make sure I explain it to you. Okay?
Okay.
Do you have any questions on any of this stuff so far?
No, I think you're just kind of like outlining the process kind of step by step and like what to expect every milestone that we hit. Would that be correct?
Yeah, because I've found that selfishly, when I'm dealing with an informed buyer, it makes my job a lot easier because buying a home and selling a home is an incredibly emotional experience. When you haven't done this before, it's tons of money. It's the roof over your head for you and your family. So you want to make sure that you're making smart decisions. And you're going to have a lot of anxiety. They have a thing in our business called, in psychology, it's called buyer's remorse. It's a real thing. You're spending $800,000. But the good news is this is the type of purchase you can tell any one of your friends and they're not going to go, oh my God, you did what? It's not like you're blowing it on an exotic car or a cruise or a lavish vacation or an expensive watch. I mean, you're buying your first home and in the United States anyway, most people think that's pretty wholesome. So now we've gone through the offer process. Let's assume that we've got our offer negotiated and accepted. Okay. So what happens in Ohio? We don't have attorneys that handle closings. So we're going to just send the offer to you. Once we get it back from the seller, any changes that have been made and agreed upon, they'll all be initialed. And then the contract is ratified and it becomes a legally binding contract. And the good news for you there is that the seller can't then just sell it to somebody else for more money. Okay? No more questions?
No, not yet. I got some notes
cool.
that I'm writing down and I'm sure I'll have some throughout the process.
All right, perfect. All right, so let's assume we've got our offer accepted day one, okay? And the good news is you're not going to have to remember any of this stuff. I'm going to give you this checklist because we're going to be prompting you every step of the way. Because there's lots of things that can go wrong if we're not doing our job. Because again, the seller's looking out for themselves. There's tons of people involved in the transaction. You've got lenders and appraisers and lawyers and title people, insurance agents, the other realtor, the seller, right? So my job is to protect your best interest to make sure you're making smart decisions, not only at the beginning, but all the way through until you get your keys.
Okay. That sounds
so on
great.
Day one, you'll be writing an earnest money check or we're going to send you an app that you can use that's secure and you'll be able to wire the money directly to the title company, right? That's the earnest money. And they're going to hold that in a trust account. So, and the seller doesn't get that money. The only way you would lose that money is if you breach the contract. Meaning if you just flake out one day and say, I'm out, and it doesn't fit in with one of the contingencies, then you could lose that money.
Okay. Yeah,
All
I was
right?
going to ask you, like, what if, the inspection is worse than we expected? Can we back out and I get that money back, right?
Well, we're going to go through that next. So let me just go through that with you. The answer is yes. Once we have the home inspection, I'm going to go through that in the next couple of minutes, and then I'll explain the options after the home inspection. Is that cool?
Yes. Okay.
All right. So on day one, you're also going to contact your lender and send all the docs. As long as you authorize me, I'll just send those over to the lender that you choose.
Okay.
Okay. So there's going to be 2 things going on at once. The bank or the mortgage company that is giving you the loan, they're going to be doing steps while we're also taking steps with our inspections and all of that. So once they take your loan application, and by the way, that whole process is going to annoy you. It's going to annoy the crap out of you because they're going to ask you for pay stubs twice. They're going to ask you for bank statements over and over again. They're going to ask you for stuff explanations on anything that may come up on your credit. Please understand that they're going to ask you for stuff that I know is going to frustrate you, but they have to get it. So just get yourself in a headspace where you know that it's just going to be annoying. They're loaning you a ton of money. I mean, you're putting down 10%. They're loaning you, 90%. So lenders, because rates are higher, they don't want foreclosures. They don't want us to go into a housing crash. So they're protecting that by being a lot more conservative. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Okay. So they're going to order an appraisal. That's not done electronically anymore. A human being, a licensed appraiser, is going to have to go to the house, go inside, check everything out. Then they're going to compare it to other homes that have sold in the neighborhood. So it's going to have to appraise for what you're purchasing it for.
Okay.
Okay? So when we're going back to the first page, if we're making an offer and it's higher than the list price, we want to make sure that we can support that with comparable sales so the deal doesn't blow apart.
Okay.
All right. The next thing, they're going to do a title search to make sure that there's no liens on the property. Liens would be their mortgages, those will be paid off. But other liens would be like if they've been sued, or if there was a mechanic's lien, is like if they put a furnace in and didn't pay, or they put a driveway in and didn't pay, the contractor can put a lien on the house. So all of that stuff will be looked at so that you don't get a property that's got a cloud on the title or any issues. So title search will be done. Once that's done, they'll issue title insurance to guarantee that the search was accurate. And then final loan approval will be issued. So from today to number 4, final loan approval, you're looking about 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. And by the way, if we make an offer on a house today and get it accepted, we're looking at 30 to 45 days to close. And
Wow, that's fast.
that won't be a suggested date. We'll have a date on a contract, so you'll know when you're moving.
Okay.
All right. So day 1, again, I'm going to give you a list of home inspectors. It's very important you have an inspection done. It's very important.
Can I use any inspector I want, or?
You can, but please understand, if you get some guy that went to a career school, he took a 2-week course, and he's doing it for $300 instead of $600 or $700. The whole idea here is for you to actually not get a false sense of confidence, but actually understand what you're getting. Okay. So we've got a list of inspectors that don't do work on the side. They're insured and bonded. They're licensed through the state. So I've got a list of about 5 inspectors. You can look for anyone you want, but these are guys that I've vetted out and we use all the time.
Okay. That sounds good. Why, what, if you trust them, I might as well trust them as well.
Well, or you can go online, but again, the big thing is if you get some guy that went to a career school and you'll never know. He's taken a 2-week course, then he got licensed through the state. We want people that are career inspectors. They've been doing this for years. And a good inspector is going to tell you about what's acceptable for the house and what isn't, right? So if you went into a brand new house and there was a crack in the concrete floor, or you went into a 20-year-old house and there was the same crack, they're going to look at them differently. But the point is, settling issues in a new house versus settling issues in an older home, they're going to look at it subjectively. It's like if you went into the doctor's today and you had you had an issue, like your heart was beating too fast, or something was wrong, you had plaque in your artery, they'd probably life flight you. But if you were 87, they tell you to monitor it. So yeah. Home inspectors are going to look at houses. Like, they're not going to look at new ones the same way that they look at old ones. That's why it's very important that they're going to be able to share with you what's wrong so that you just don't panic every step of the way. Because some of the things are going to be normal for the age of the home. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
So we're going to schedule the home inspection on day 1. Once the inspection is complete, and by the way, the typical inspections are going to be in our area, are going to be a general home inspection, a radon gas inspection. Do you know what radon gas is?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's measured in picocuries per liter. It's very common. 4.0 is the level in North America. And by the way, a lot of homes test positive or high for radon. We can have if it comes in higher than 4, it's not like cancer. Radon only has a half-life of about 24 to 48 hours. So there's a system called a mitigation system where they drill a hole in the floor and they vent it outside, and that will correct the situation. So just the reason I'm telling you about it now is because when you have your home inspection, if the radon comes in high, I don't want you thinking, oh my God, we bought a terrible house. We would just ask the seller to put in a mitigation system.
Okay, sounds fair.
Right? Yeah. If there's any other health and safety issues, such as mold in the attic, and by the way, mold in the attic is very common. I'm telling you now, half the homes have mold in the attic because the bathroom fans vent into the attic and there's a lot of moisture up there. So we would just ask the seller to have a mold remediation contractor go over there and correct it. I'm bringing this stuff up now because there's certain things that come up a lot, and I'd rather discuss them with you now so that it won't be the first time at the home inspection.
Yeah, that's understandable.
All right. So once the inspections are complete, if there are any health and safety issues, expensive things that you can't live with, then we can ask the seller to correct those. If the seller's not willing, you can either back out or accept the house as is, or we can try to work out some sort of a financial negotiation, like a closing cost credit or something like that. So basically, it's open to negotiations again. But if you can't get you what you want after the home inspection, you do have the right to walk away. If we find latent material defects, meaning hidden real defects, that they're not willing to correct, then we can walk away
Okay,
and get your earnest money back.
sounds
Any
like a plan.
questions yet?
No, thank you for explaining that so thoroughly as well.
You're welcome. Sometimes the general home inspector will recommend other inspections, such as HVAC inspections or mold tests or that sort of thing. So if that being the case, then you could have other inspections done. We won't know until we actually get the general home inspection done.
Okay.
All right. Once that's all out of the way, we're going to have an addendum that addresses any repairs and then a removal of contingency. So we just remove the home inspection contingency from the purchase agreement. And that, again, if we had a house under contract today, that's going to be about 7 to 10 days, whatever we've negotiated in the contract.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And by the closing day is probably going to be 30 to 40 days down the road. All right. All right. Next, 10 to 14 days prior to the closing date, you're going to contact your homeowner's insurance agent to coordinate a homeowner's insurance policy. You're going to need to secure a policy prior to closing. Your mortgage lender is going to insist on seeing a copy of that policy and a paid receipt to show that it's in effect when you close. All right. And I'll give you some names of insurance agents if you'd like.
Perfect.
3 to 5 days before the closing date, if applicable, we're going to coordinate a time to go and inspect the repairs and do our final walkthrough. All right. The whole reason for the final walkthrough, it's usually like we just do it. We rarely ever find issues at a final walkthrough, but there was one time where I walked into the house and the basement had flooded. So we were able to get some remedy after that. But usually what we're looking for is just to make sure they made the repairs and there's been no adverse changes. No one's had a party at the house and trashed the flooring or whatever. We just want to make sure that when it closes, you're buying what you thought you were buying.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I know this stuff's boring, but we'll get through it. 3 to 5 days prior to the closing date, you're going to schedule an appointment with the lender. So the lender is going to arrange with the title company. And again, this is in Ohio. All states are different. But in our state, the lender is going to arrange with the title company to send an escrow agent out to you to sign your documents. So you're going to sign your mortgage documents, a closing statement showing where all your money's going. I'll go over it ahead of time to make sure that there's no fees in there that you weren't aware of. And you're going to sign your final documents. Now, where we are in Ohio, we have escrow closings. We don't have round table closings. So you'll sign your documents. The seller will sign their documents. Some states and municipalities or areas they're all different. Sometimes they have round table closings where the buyer and the seller meet in the same place. They get their money, you get the keys. That's not how it's done here. All right. So once you sign your final papers, they send it back to the title company, and then we'll get a call later on that day saying that the deed has recorded. And at that point, I'll call you and say that that the deed's recorded, and we'll arrange to get the keys. Now, if we go back to the first page, Sometimes an owner is going to ask if they can stay in the house beyond the closing date. So if that's the case, you're going to know about it back on page 1. It's not going to come up at the last minute, and you would have agreed to it. So the way we usually handle it is with a rent back agreement. We'll get a security deposit. Sometimes if an owner's building a house and it's not quite ready yet, or if they're moving, they have to. They're waiting for their kid to get out of school or whatever, right? But again, we'll negotiate that back on day 1. Nothing will ever be imposed on you. Do you understand that? So 10 to 14 days before the
Sorry,
possession.
had muted myself because I was coughing up a storm there.
Oh, no worries. Basically, well, if you get possession the date of closing, well, then the day it closes, I'll meet you and give you the keys. If we have agreed to let them stay in it beyond, which we agreed back on the contract, well, then it's that date. They're going to keep utilities in their name until the time that they move, or the closing date, whichever comes first, whichever comes last. So I'll send you a list of utility numbers so that you can coordinate getting the utility switched into your name prior to you moving in.
Okay.
All right. So this is pretty much the process. There's a lot of steps. We're involved in the whole thing. We're certainly not just opening up doors and smiling. I mean, you can see that this process is 30 to 40 days long. There's lots of steps along the way. Based on what we've talked about today, do you have any questions at all?
No, I think it's you're gonna make it sound pretty easy. I know there's gonna be some ups and downs throughout the process, but this is really helpful to have a checklist like this where we can, check things off and know kind of what to look forward to next.
My whole goal is so that as we go through this process, nothing's a surprise. And if it is a surprise, I'm going to be right there with you and we'll try to work out a solution. So based on everything here, I'm assuming then you want me to help you?
Yeah, I think that actually would be great.
All right, cool. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to show you what our buyer representation agreement looks like. And basically, it's just a housekeeping item because just like when you hire an accountant or a financial advisor or an attorney, there's going to be paperwork that spells out what their role is, how they get paid, and all of that. Is that cool if we go through that real quick?
Yeah, I think so. That'd be great.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we go over the buyer representation agreement and break it down for the buyer client.